Super. Okay, so the recording has started again. I can see people are just coming back. Hopefully everybody had a nice brief break and ready for the rest of the meeting, and we will get started. So we are on to agenda item number 7 now. I'm sorry, just bear with me a moment. I think my internet is struggling slightly, so I can only see some people. It's a bit laggy. Can people hear me? Can I get a thumbs up from someone? Okay, good. Sorry, my screen is definitely not doing what it should be doing. Right, so we're on to item number 7. So this is the paper in front of you regarding the National Care Service Bill amendments. And I'm going to invite Fiona in to take us through this one. So I can't actually see if Fiona's back. I'm assuming that she is. I will pause and hopefully she'll just start speaking as if by magic.
Like that. Thank you, Chair. So thank you very much. I agreed to do the presentation of this paper today in Gareth's absence, so I would just take a moment to thank him for drafting this paper. To be fair, Gareth's only been more recently involved, hence is why he's asked me to present the paper to board today. So on the whole, I'm going to ask for the paper to be taken as read, just to add a few comments. So as I stated in my own report, the amendments referenced in the paper were published on the 24th of June 2024, and they propose that the lead agency model option will be removed from within and as part of the National Care Service legislative changes. So the report is really here to outline a factual description of the background and the amendment process. And really it's limited to that because the implications as yet of that proposal are unknown and haven't been scoped. So the assurance that's offered in the paper is that a technical assessment has been initiated jointly by NHS Highland and Highland Council to ensure that the full scope of risks and impacts are recognised as the process progresses. Sorry, put my teeth in. So I'll just limit my comments there and I'll take any questions that the board have in relation to the paper.
Thank you, Fiona. That's helpful. Okay, I'm happy to open up for questions and comments at this early stage. Obviously, as Fiona has outlined, there's work required to understand the full scope of the implications and the work that will be required to get us from here to there, and that is underway. But I'm happy if people want to pose some early questions that we can either pick up today or potentially take away to factor into our discussions going forward. Okay, I'll bring in Susan, please. Oh, now I can't hear you, Susan, but I don't know if that's just me.
No, I'm here.
No, okay. And it doesn't look like you're muted. I can't see your little mute sign, so I wonder if there's something a little bit dodgy with the sound. Okay. Not working. Okay. Right. Well, we'll perhaps either have to come back to Susan, or perhaps this will be a future thing. I think maybe Susan will drop out and try and come back in again, so we'll try that in a minute. Alex, I'll bring you in the meantime. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, very interesting paper, and thanks for that. One question was, we were given opportunity to comment when this whole thing kicked off. It's now got to stage 2. Will we get another opportunity for further comment, or is it only going to be through working groups that yourself, Fiona, are in?
So Alex, I'd pondered whether to add to my comments because it's been launched since the paper was written, but a call for evidence in regard of these amendments has now been opened. So I'm delighted you asked that question to give me the opportunity to share that with you. So if as a board we wish to make commentary following our discussion today, then that's certainly open for us to do so. There's about 7 questions within that. We can answer one or all of them dependent on what we feel as a board we want to be saying back to the government about their proposals. I'm also, you'll recall, one of the negotiators within the tripartite arrangement, so between Scottish Government, COSLA and the NHS. So I've been contributing to a response in regard of the broader set of amendments on behalf of board chief executives. I have suggested that we will not make a comment within that about lead agency, that would be something that we would probably want to do locally. So the national submission won't comment on that. It will be up to us to decide whether we want to make that local comment.
Thanks, Fiona. I'm happy that we can discuss this further, but my own opinion is that we should take the opportunity to and of course this paper is in front of us today in the context of undoing the lead agency model and bringing that into alignment with what's been outlined in the bill. But of course there are wider considerations for us, and I'm particularly mindful of the fact that in our in our scheme of integration in Argyll and Bute, we have the full range of delegated services included in that arrangement. And whilst there has been a lot of discussion around adult services and what that might mean, we obviously have to consider children's services, and in Argyll and Bute the justice element as well. So I think it would be wise for us to take the opportunity to feed back in both from the lead agency perspective and the Argyll and Bute full suite of delegated services, and of course to reflect the challenges that we experience with regards to our rural and large geography. I think it would be sensible for us to feed that in. I'm good at Susan's rejoined, so let's see if we can. Let's try again.
Can you hear me now?
Great, perfect.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, and I had to go out and come back in again. It's a small point about questioning the assurance level, which I note is none. And I wondered if that was because it was for awareness. But if the paper is for awareness, then the paper has given us that awareness. So if it's for awareness and it hasn't given us any awareness.
I'm happy to be persuaded that we undersold ourselves there, Susan.
So I think you could give us more. I feel assured that I have got awareness now of this situation. I recognise there's not much detail yet, and there's a load more to go. But I think you could say we have been assured on our awareness. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Good point. Excellent. Yes, I would support that. Thank you, Susan. Oh, sorry, Evan, did you want to come back in on one of the other points? Was it something different?
Just on your point in relation to children's services, absolutely right, Chair. That's really important that we take account of the full range of different delegations of children's services, and of course, uniquely in Argyll and Bute, that includes maternity services. Just to give some, I suppose, assurance. I am on the Children's Services Group as an NHS representative, deputising for Fiona. So I think it's just good for us to be aware that we're well represented across Highland on some of the working groups, which is great, particularly from our kind of unique setup and also from a rural perspective.
Sarah, can I also just come in on children's as well, maybe just to draw that point out, because we've veered into that territory. So this set of amendments is not the complete set of stage 2 amendments, and there were some areas that haven't been included because the tripartite group and stakeholders weren't able to come to a shared view about the right way forward. And probably one of the most central within that is the children's service issue that will have to be brought forward as an amendment or a proposal ahead of stage 2. So it will be, I would have thought, a relatively short timeline before clarity on that is sought. So I am keen that we remain open in the way that we're looking at the change in Highland to ensure that that doesn't drop off, because as we were discussing earlier in the IPQR, our commitment to our whole population as a health board is essential, and we would have to be assured that changes have thought about all elements of our responsibilities within any proposed changes to the way forward.
Thank you, Fiona. And just for awareness for board members, Anne and I had the opportunity to meet with Marie Todd, Minister for Social Care, mental wellbeing and sport, who of course is leading on the bill, and it was a very high level conversation, but we did have the opportunity to feed this sort of some of these early thoughts into that conversation, which reflects sort of what we're talking about today. And again, that was a very early high level conversation, but building on the representation that Evan and Fiona have described, and we took that opportunity to do that. Okay, I'm going to bring in Anne next, and then it'll be Jerry after that. So Anne, please.
Well, I think it was just as Chair of Staff Governance, Sarah, I think it's, although there's no detail at the moment, I think it's important for us to note as a board that this is going to be a worrying time for many of our staff, particularly as it is going to be some time before we're able to set out with any clarity what the implications might be for their employment situation. So I just wanted to note that we had addressed that issue at staff governance and agreed that we needed to keep this very firmly on our work plan and have regular reports on how we're trying to communicate and engage with staff as far as we possibly can throughout the coming months. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anne, for highlighting that. Okay, I've got Jerry next, please.
Thank you, Sarah. Probably just a quick question, which we probably will not have the answer to yet. It's just whether you and Fiona and others have had any thoughts yet on what the process for us as a board might be moving forward from today, because I'm aware that our next board meeting is probably not until back end of September. And I totally agree that we should be taking the opportunity to submit something in the call for evidence, but obviously what would be required out of that then is an agreed board view to submit and said call for evidence, and where discussions with the Highland Council and maybe the JMC fit into that whole timetable over the summer months. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll maybe see if Fiona wants to come into that. I suppose the bit about timeframes, just to reflect. So when we had the opportunity to meet with Marie Todd, Rachel McGrew was in attendance, and Rachel, I can't remember her job title, apologies, but she is the civil servant leading on it, and we had a bit of a discussion around that, trying to understand what is the timeline and what does the process look like, both from their perspective and also, for us as a board, and of course taking into consideration that the partnership element of the council as well. So we had a discussion about that, and Fiona can probably come in with some more detail. I know Fiona has had conversation with Rachel, and I think part of the answer to your question, Jerry, will fall out of the technical assessment that Fiona has described. But I'll hand over to Fiona. She might be able to furnish you with a little bit more detail on that.
So I suppose the way that I would phrase it, Sarah, is that we've moved from the hypothetical to the practical, that this has been hypothetically being discussed really since the Derek Feely review was published back, was that 2021, if I remember rightly, where this was referenced as a potential area for consideration of change. But it's really remained in that hypothetical space until this amendment was published in June. So I think when we've done the technical assessment, I would suppose, this isn't agreed, that it will need officers within the board and the council to look at whether they recognise that analysis and where there's areas of common ground or where there's areas where there may be differences of view, both in benchmarking the status quo arrangement as well as looking to what that pathway forward will be. And then I think when we've gone through that stage, then it will be for board members and locally elected members to start their engagement in a collaboration of imagining what a new future will be and how we would want to go about doing that. I think one of the things that makes it difficult to move from that hypothetical to the practical is that by the nature of it being a framework bill, a lot of the detail is not contained within it because that's predicated on secondary legislation. So we're doing our best to plan without a lot of handholds, if I can put it in a climbing metaphor. There's not a lot of hand grips being nailed to the wall yet. So we're mapping our way through it. but it's going to take that engagement with the civil service and their understanding of the framework nature of the bill for us to try and map out a timeline with more certainty than I can today.
And I suppose just before I bring Graham in, just to reflect that in that meeting, many of the questions that Anne and I posed in that meeting are being echoed here today. And there was an offer from Rachel and her colleagues to pick that up with Fiona after we had this discussion today. I suppose so that they can get an understanding of all of our questions, and items that the handholds that we would like to see put in place, and then they can pick it up afterwards. And in terms of, you're right, Jerry, we've got a bit of a gap before our next board meeting. I mean, without being too sort of down, I don't imagine there would be a huge amount of movement in between now and then anyway, but it does give the opportunity for some discussions offline, and then when we come back for our next board meeting, we can maybe at least have some more clarity around the anticipated processes and timelines, and we can discuss that further. Okay, I'm going to bring Graham in next, please.
Someone's got to ask the daft laddie question, so I'll step up to the plate. Can you tell us, Fiona, how Highland ended up as the only authority in this position, and probably more importantly, the decision that was made, to have it go a different way, does that have any bearing on what needs to come into the planning going forward?
So I think there are others around this metaphorical table that probably have got memories longer than mine around the decision making. Because it goes back really some, I think, well, probably 15 years, 14 years from when decisions were first made. And I can rightly claim that I wasn't even in Ireland at the time.
Sorry, Fiona, I just assumed that you knew everything. You see, that was why I asked you.
Bless you.
I'm sorry. I know it's a historical question, but I just think it's sometimes good to look at these things and find out why, and whether it has actually any bearing on going forward. About informs us really for the planning.
I mean, I wouldn't want to move fully into speculation because, as I say, I wasn't here. But my understanding and the narrative was a very optimistic one, that bringing things into a single organisation would simplify some of the arrangements that would allow a greater integration of service delivery. But as I said in the Derek Feely review, there was commentary that he didn't feel that the evidence of the success of that was evident, and therefore running a model that was different to the rest of Scotland. Now, had we gone half and half, maybe he would have come to a different conclusion. Who's to know? But not having anyone to benchmark against, certainly I find quite challenging when, we've just spent an hour earlier looking at our IPQR, which is fundamentally a benchmarking exercise where we're making comparisons to other people. The absence of having that, the absence of having people that we can go and take practice improvement ideas from, etc., it does have its limitations just because of that solo uptake. So I think that's probably as much as I can comment, but I'm not going to say old hands because I think they might take offence, but there are some other people that have put their hands up who may wish to come in and comment.
But some knowledgeable colleagues are going to step up and give us a bit more context here.
Knowledgeable colleagues, thank you.
So Boyd and then Alistair, please.
Okay, so I'm one old hand. So 2015 is when it happened, and to answer, I think it was Graham's question, effectively Highland integrated first, 1 or 2 years ahead of rest of Scotland. I didn't work for NHS Highland at that time, but I was in lots of meetings where this was discussed, and indeed the rest of Scotland looked at Highland's model of lead agency and actually went with the other model. So the next sweep took in pretty well all of the country, and everybody went in the other integration option that was available, which is the one that now everyone's familiar with. So Highland, in jumping first, that gave people information and details that made them actually all prefer the other way. for various reasons. And I guess 2015 is now, that's almost 10 years ago. So so it's been a long time that we've been running in the scheme, and that's the history of it, really.
Thanks, Boyd. Alistair?
Yeah, I think I was involved, and I think it was before 2015. I think some of it goes back to 2010, 2009, even the conversation started. And I think, Graham, at that time, we weren't talking about adult social care. We were talking about care for the Highlands, and we were looking at children's care as well, which often gets left out of it. And of course, the health visitors and the children's commission services went to the council, and adult social care, if you like, went to NHS Highland. So it was looking at a totally different, holistic way of delivering care within the Highland community. And there was an awful lot of interest in what Highland Council and NHS Highland were doing at that time from across the whole of Scotland. And I think with hindsight, it's been proven that it was that the model we've got and operated is fine when money's not a problem. But when money becomes a problem, I think the strains on the system become more so on the lead agency model, more so perhaps than others. But that's why it was set up. It was, if you like, providing a holistic care almost from cradle to the grave of how we wanted to deliver community care and how it would link in with acute services across the whole region. I think it started April 2012 from memory. I was there. I've got a T-shirt, but there was lots of development sessions before that, and it was driven from, if you like, professional guidance from social workers, from medics, from clinicians, as being the system they wanted to see introduced and put it in place. And I think that's about it. But I shall write a history book this afternoon.
Thank you.
We look forward to reading your bestseller, Alistair. Okay, good. So yeah, a little bit of a history lesson there, and I think you're right, Graham. It is helpful to understand the context. And I would, although taking Fiona's point about the lack of benchmarking ability in this particular model of integration, I suppose I'm just reflecting on a conversation I was involved in yesterday with chairs from all the other territorial boards in Scotland. Although IJBs have that ability to benchmark in the way that Fiona described is very helpful, there is still a wide variance across the IJBs, both reflecting the fact that they don't all have the same bits delegated to them in that scheme of integration, and reflective of the wide varieties of relationships and sort of political local political structures and things like that as well. So but that being said, this is as Fiona described how things are going to move forward. I just wonder, Fiona, sorry, the call for evidence and feedback, and I'm just thinking about back to Jerry's point about when our next board meeting is. Should we just agree what's some sort of practical steps about how we'll do that? Obviously, if we want to capture some of this in a response from us as a board, but the time frame might not fit with our next board meeting, and so I just wanted to check in with you around that and how we might want to do that in a way that gives people the opportunity to be comfortable with it before we submit.
So the closing date for the call of evidence is the 30th of August, I believe. So what I propose is that we draft some comments based on the discussion that's happened during the meeting today, that we share those by email and gain the consent of the board, that they're reflective of areas of ongoing focus or interest or thoughts, and we'll pick it up that way if people are content with that suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Alex, please.
We've now got a board development session that we might be able to plug this into. Is that not sometime in August?
Yeah, we can probably do a combination actually, Alex. So let's Fiona, we'll take that offline and just look at dates and things, and we'll do that. But yeah, you're right, Alex. We'll either it'll be one or the other or a combination of the both, but we'll make sure that we circulate something so that people can have an opportunity to tweak before we send that in. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up with questions or comments. Obviously, we're going to be talking about this for a while, but at this stage we were being asked to note the stage 2 amendments, which we have seen in the papers, and also note that further updates providing clarity on the legal, financial and governance implications will come forward to our future meetings. Is everyone okay with that? And okie dokie. Next up, item number 8. This is our corporate risk register, and I will ask Boyd to speak to this item, please.
Thanks, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me. And the following section is this paper is presented to the board for consideration of updates to the risks that are in the NHS Highland Strategic Board Risk Register. They're aligned to governance committee activity in whichever governance committee that they each fall within, and consideration is given to them in that space and the link to our strategy as well. The FRPC, Finance Resources Performance Committee, asked that some of the risks are reviewed because looking at the scores and mitigating actions, as some of them seem more aligned to level 2 risks rather than level 1 corporate risks. And this will now, this work will now be carried forward and completed. Also, the Clinical and Care Governance Committee will have an additional risk alignment, which should be presented at the next meeting of the Clinical Governance Committee and should come to board in September. The specific changes or additions, there's addition of risk 1255 by the ADP. And that risk has been added to reflect the overall deliverability of the 24-25 ADP in recognition of services that are currently not sustainable and reliant on remedial intervention or unfunded resources to cope with demand and activity. This was a risk in 23-24, and it's now been updated to reflect the annual delivery plan being presented today. The other addition of risk is 1279, the financial risk of delivering adult social care services. This risk was approved at the FRPC as part of the risk governance routes into the board, and has been added to articulate the financial risk of delivering adult social care services because of the underlying financial position, with a significant overspend likely against the allocation received and an opening deficit of 16.25 million. So that's probably enough detail from me at this stage. The other risks are laid out in the paper, and I'm happy to close off with that summary and allow questions, Chair.
Thanks, Boyd. Okay, happy to open up to any questions or comments on the risk register. Bearing in mind, obviously, what you said, Boyd, about these being scrutinised in some detail at committee as well. Emily, I'll bring you in, please.
Thanks, Sarah, and thank you, Boyd. My question's around the cybersecurity risk, which I know is always one that's kind of on our radar. I just wondered if there's anything specific by way of a working group or project being undertaken as a result of the major incident in Dumfries and Galloway, just to see about the specifics of that and whether that's captured in this risk or whether there's separate work going on about that.
Thanks, Emily. And I don't know, yeah, David. Thank you, David.
That's all right. No, it's a good question. We are part of the group that is reviewing it, and Ian Ross from our eHealth team has been very much involved with the discussions and discovery that's coming from that piece of work. The first review that we did was look at where the risk identified, and we recognised that their security levels were at a different level from where we were, and we could be assured that such an attack as they had would not penetrate the defences that we had. You can never be complacent in these things, and that's why it remains a very high risk for us, because those who are perpetrating the attacks are spend all of their time trying to do it and have a huge amount of resources. So, but we work very closely with the Cybersecurity Centre, and our updates are regular, if sometimes annoying. When it comes onto your computer, it's always a good reminder as to why it's important to do the upgrades. But there's no specific update based on that, but certainly any learnings from it will be taken into account.
Thank you, David. Okay, do we have any other questions or comments with regards to our corporate risk register? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else coming in, so just to recap the ask, so the proposed assurance level is substantial. We're being asked to note the report that it provides confidence of compliance with our legislation, policy and board objectives, and examine and consider the evidence provided. Is everybody okay with that? Great. Okay, thank you very much. So next up, we have a couple of items that I'm going to invite Gay to speak to. So first up, item number 9 on the agenda. This is our annual whistleblowing report. So Gay, I'd like you to come in at this point, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, this is the annual report for whistleblowing in NHS Highland for the year 23-24, and is actually our 3rd annual report since the launch of the whistleblowing standards in April 21. The standards do require each board to produce an annual report as well as quarterly reports through the year. The report itself summarises the activity under the nationally agreed key performance indicators and also provides an overview of the learning outcomes from cases that concluded during that year. The assurance offered is substantial based on the fact that we are compliant with our reporting requirements under the standards. Following this meeting, the report will be submitted to the Independent National Whistleblowing Officer, known as the INWO, in line with the standards also. So the key points from the report are that there has again been a small number of cases raised during that year. We do continue to manage approximately about 200 contacts through our confidential contact service, which is provided by the Guardian service, and this may be one of the reasons why the numbers remain low. INWO did not uphold any complaints in relation to the findings of the investigations, but did identify required improvements in processes, and we are progressing them through our whistleblowing and speaking up action plan. Further work is required to improve the timeliness of our processes. The cases are often complex, and completing them within the 20 working days for stage 2 remains challenging. We have, however, put in place administration support, and training for senior managers is being planned for the autumn. There is learning from the small number of upheld cases outlined in the report. However, we need to consider further how we progress and share the learning whilst maintaining confidentiality. There has been some consideration for the need of tracking actions arising from upheld concerns, but concluded that these are best managed through the appropriate governance arrangements. However, we will introduce a review period to ensure that actions have been progressed. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
I lost my mouse for a minute there. Thank you, Gay. That's really helpful. I just wonder at this point, I might just pause and see if Bert, our whistleblowing champion, wants to add any comment at this stage. I don't know. Bert is a very active and proactive in his approach to raising awareness of the whistleblowing standards, but I wondered, Bert, if you wanted to add anything at this stage.
Thank you, Chair. The report is comprehensive. It complies with the requirements in terms of what is expected by the INWO. In terms of where we are with whistleblowing, yes, the numbers are low. There can be a lot of reasons for that. Gay has alluded to some of the reasons for that. I think We are still on a journey. I think that it's a journey that will continue for some time. And one of the important parts, I think, is raising awareness of the standards. Staff will know about what the word whistleblowing means, but my experience is that there's still quite a bit to be done in terms of awareness of the whistleblowing standards. Nonetheless, from all of my involvement in whistleblowing over the past 4 years or so, I think we are progressing, and I think it's important to note that last year we did a pause and reflect session, which enabled us to reflect on where we had been, how that journey had been, where we are now, and where we're going forward. And Gay has already mentioned one or two of the points there. The difficulties in complying with the timelines that are imposed by the standards. These are very, very difficult to adhere to. 20 working days, especially for cases which are complex, is very difficult to achieve. What is important that the person who has raised the concern is kept abreast at every stage of the investigation, where we are with things. So the timelines are something that we need to continue to focus on, as indeed is the continued awareness raising and the visits that I carry out across the board area. They are only one part of the awareness raising, but I think an important part. So that's really all I've got to say, Chair. I'm happy to take questions, as I'm sure Gay is also. Thank you.
Thanks, Bert. And just to pick up that bit about awareness raising, that that's a continual piece of work, and there are many strands to that. Your visits and your work, Bert, is a part of that. And I know that we have I'll get the name, but the Speak Up week that happens every year. That's a part of it, as well as kind of ongoing comms and support and promotion through leadership throughout the organisation is really important. Okay, I'm just going to pause if anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, and obviously just to remind people, this is our annual report, but we get the quarterly reports that go through staff governance as well. So there's a lot of discussion around that within that committee. So the assurance level that is being proposed today is substantial, and we are being asked to approve that report. Is everybody happy with that? Great, thumbs up, thank you very much. So that takes us on, Gay again, that takes us on to our Workforce and Equalities Monitoring Annual Report. So over to you again, Gay.
Okay, thank you. So this is the Workforce Monitoring Report, which again is an annual report that must be published to demonstrate that NHS Highland meets the requirement that's set out in the public sector equality duty, which is to gather, use and publish employee information annually about the recruitment, development and retention of staff with protected characteristics. Following today's meeting, the report will be published on our public website. The information within the report considers the workforce position for the period January to December to 2023, and the board have been asked to take substantial assurance again that this demonstrates compliance with the requirement under the public sector equality duty. The data will be used to consider how to improve and promote equality throughout our organisation. It will also be used to inform the equality, diversity and inclusion strategy and our work plan and actions, which will be developed through the rest of this year. Some key points of the report are that the overall substantive headcount within NHS Highland grew by 354 colleagues. A total of 2,811 people joined the organisation in 2023. In comparison with the population demographics for Highland from the 2022 census, NHS Highland employs a greater number of persons from a number of ethnic backgrounds. There is further work obviously to be done. One is to encourage colleagues to complete their ethnicity data in ease to allow for greater accuracy of reporting in future years. For example, we did see a high percentage of the workforce ticking the prefer not to see box. Some further improvement is required in the collation of information from the notice of maternity leave forms and from our training data. Thank you.
Thank you, Gay. Okay, any questions around the workforce and equalities monitoring? No, I'm not seeing anything coming in. It's not directly linked, but I just wanted to reflect back some conversations I've been having with Scottish Government around recruitment of non-execs, which I'm coming on to soon, because, you know, it's important that we have representation and diversity inclusion at all levels of the organisation, and I've been involved in some interesting conversations with Scottish Government around that too, and they're, you know, probably not seeing the progress that we would like to see, but we're having a good debate around how we can try and make that better going forward. But it's interesting to hear those numbers that you've presented there, Gay. I think that's something for us to take away and think about. I've got a couple of people with questions who want to come in. So I've got Jerry and then Karen, please.
Thank you, Sarah. I suppose it's a fairly straightforward question, I hope, in terms of the report has got a vast amount of data in it. And I suppose what I was wondering when I was reading it through is, well, how do we utilise that data to make improvements to our system? Because obviously there's one that stands out about the 1% who, and most people prefer not to say, which really contrasts with the national number of people who declare that they've got a disability of some sort. So I just wondered how we use the data in terms of that, because we're a massive amount of data, and how do we use it?
Yeah, thank you. So we have established an oversight group to look at equality, diversity and inclusion across NHS Highland, and that will also develop the strategy, but the data will therefore be used to make sure that we're focusing in the right areas, as well as the other information we have across the organisation to ensure that priorities are correct for that group, and the short and medium and longer term priorities are set out as a result. Thank you.
Thanks, Gay. Karen, please.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Gay. Really interesting read. I suppose two areas in relation to the increased numbers of people over 65 in the organisation. I think one question for me is, does that give us any particular areas of concern for staff and levels within particular areas of the service? And also your assumption that potentially the higher numbers of people over 65 are in particular job families, and that kind of question about whether that's been driven by financial necessity. I suppose as an organisation, how do we then recognise and support those people? There's obviously that kind of shift towards longer working lives and, you know, later retirement ages and all of those things. So I suppose it's, how does our data reflect that moving forward? Will there be a 70+ band? Will that become more normal? But in that also, how do we ensure the health and well-being of people and the potential opportunities for flexible working in that type of kind of healthy working situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And yes, we will be looking, as you've referred to, around how we support individuals working longer. Nationally, they've looked at the partial retirement and the retire and return processes to assist with the flexible working, which is maybe one of the areas. The other strategies that we're looking at within people and culture is health and well-being, so that will feature there too, and also employability. So not necessarily around those that are in that age bracket, but looking at how we ensure that we are an employer that individuals would want to come and work with, and what are the pipelines and career pathways that they could take in order to come in to the organisation.
Thanks, Gay. And Muriel, please.
Thank you, Gay. Is this seen to be quite a risk when we've got nearly 50% of the workforce over 50? I know we've talked, following on from what Karen was saying there, we've talked about partial retirement, but I think we need to look at, across the board here and the level of risk this is bringing. Equally with the skill sets that potentially we are losing as an organisation. You can always, when you recruit new people, you can't teach experience, and I know that from a previous life. So I think this is a bit of a red flag to me, and I look forward to what the staff are saying and as to what solutions they are coming up with as well, because sometimes they're best placed to come up with solutions on this type of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I suppose that's where the employability strategy and work plan becomes really important to ensure that we do have that overlap of individuals leaving the organisation and new people joining.
Thanks, Gay. And I suppose just to pick up as well, before I bring Fiona in, the bit that you opened me with a bit about the risk. I think that's right to raise that. And I suppose I'm thinking of the risks that we have on the corporate risk register, but also the risks that we look at within the staff governance committee. And you're right, I'm not sure that we've completely mitigated it, but I think we have captured it. But you're right, it is a real risk, both in terms of the profile, but the experience and the way that you framed that as well. But I'll bring Fiona in at this point.
Yes, I just wanted to add maybe another thought there to Muriel's comment about the age demographics in the workforce, because I think for me it reflects the age demographic changes within Highland and Argyll and Bute as an area. So I think one of the data points that we were told by government is that the Scottish average is that for each older person there's 4 equivalent working age people, but in Argyll and Bute that's at 1 to 1. And that underpins the comment I was making earlier about workforce availability. So I applaud Gay and the team for everything they're doing to try and attract young people into health and social care using all of the routes and all the innovations that we can. But I think depopulation is a much broader strategic threat for NHS Highland. And I think it's essential that we work in partnership with the population plan that I know that Highland Council, Muriel, you'll probably know more about that than I do myself, in repopulating, particularly our remote and rural parts of the country, because without working age adults, the future of health and social care looks bleak in Highland. And Gay can try and attract every young person that she can into health and social care, but however brilliant we are, we know that not every young person wants to do health and social care. I mean, more fool them. Clearly, it's a brilliant thing to do, but some of them want to fix cars or go to university or do other things. And so we have to maximise the repopulation of areas with younger people, with families, and that's complex. That needs housing, and it needs the jobs to align with housing, and it needs all of those things, and it needs things that families want, good schools, loads of other factors. So I do think it's an area where that whilst your observation is absolutely right, it presents a risk to us. The solutions are much broader than things that we can just deliver it within our own organisation.
Thanks, Fiona. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up. Sorry, Muriel, did you want to come back in? Sorry.
No, I'm having Teams issues today, so I do apologise.
No worries at all. Okay, so no other comments or questions. So just to recap, we are being offered substantial assurance around the Workforce Inequalities Monitoring Annual Report and to note the content of that. Is everyone happy with that? Yep. Okie dokie, good stuff. That takes us on to item number 11. So this is an update around our board blueprint for good governance, and just bear with me while I update my papers so that I'm on the right track here. So we're all very familiar with this now, and this has been back a few times, and we're going through the process, but this has come back to the board today for assurance against our progress. But I'll invite Ruth to come in and give a little bit more detail on this. So over to you, Ruth.
Okay, thank you very much. So yes, the report captures the progress against the board's improvement plan that was agreed last year. And the appendix to the report shows you all of the activity against all 17 of the actions included in the plan. There are now 9 actions which are for closure, and they're marked as complete on the action plan. And there are a remaining 8 of them which are longer term and organisation wide, and will therefore naturally have a longer term to come to fruition, and in fact they will potentially be business as usual going forward. But nonetheless, there's been significant progress made against all of those as well. So those actions are relating to risk, culture, and developing a quality framework. So in relation to risk, there's still work to be done on revising our organisational controls in line with the risk appetite and cascading associated training throughout the organisation. In relation to culture, there's been significant progress made by the Culture Oversight Group in initiating and pursuing a wide range of actions. That's including delivery of the Leadership and Culture Framework through a refreshed leadership and development programme. And there's also been work on establishing the People and Culture Portfolio Board that reports through to the Partnership Forum and to the Staff Governance Committee. There's been some good work on the quality framework, and we've referred to it earlier in the meeting. Again, this will extend beyond the lifespan of the plan itself. And you'll remember we had a joint session with our Area Clinical Forum colleagues in April to assist with that particular action. So the report also comments on future self-assessment activity and potential external reviews of board governance. It's very likely that all boards are going to be asked to review themselves again against the blueprint next year, potentially next May. And I'm conscious that Scottish Government are starting to consider how boards will be reviewed externally. And again, there'll be full confirmation of all of the details once they become known to me. I don't yet have all of that detail to be able to give to you. Again, we made reference to frugal governance earlier in the meeting, and there's a paragraph in the report talking about that. We'll bring further reports to you once that's appropriate. So given the progress that has been made across all of the improvement plan itself, we're recommending that the board can take substantial assurance from that progress. The whole improvement plan sits within a robust framework of control, and the various outstanding actions will continue to be overseen by governance committees, and I will take something to governance committees towards the end of this year and again report back to the board in 6 months' time. So that will be January next year. So it's there for your information and for your assurance. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks, Ruth, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions. I was just going to add a few thoughts of my own. I suppose picking up the point there that you made, Ruth, around what Scottish Government's intentions are with regards to further assessment. It's worth reminding ourselves that we were first off the starting blocks with this one because we were a pathfinder for the process, and it's been interesting in national conversations when other boards have been talking about their work against the self-assessment and the blueprint that we are, you know, that little bit ahead because we were a pathfinder, and that I suppose has had some benefits for us in the sense that we're a little bit ahead of the game. It comes with some drawbacks as well because you know, we were the first ones to do it. When you're the first, you don't necessarily have someone to take notes from. You're figuring it out all by yourself without being able to learn from someone else's mistakes. But I think the work that we've done has been seen as being very positive, and indeed kind of that path that we found has been replicated by other boards. So that's encouraging. And I just wanted to reflect as well an observation. I think this time round with this revised blueprint, it does feel like the way that we are monitoring this and managing the governance around it feels much more embedded. And I suppose I would just reflect that the topic of the blueprint for governance and our self-assessment against it and our action plan tends to come up in lots of other conversations. So we are making those links, and I think that's really important, and that keeps it live. It's not a plan that's just been created and filed away. It is part of ongoing discussions and debates around how we make best use of our resources to deliver effective governance. So I just thought that that was helpful to add in. I'm happy to take any other observations or comments or questions. Oh, okay, and obviously the committee chairs and different governance committees see this as well. So, as Ruth said, that will be coming to you soon. So we're being asked to take substantial assurance and note the oversight will continue as it has been and the further progress as per the action plan. Is everybody happy with that? Great. Okie dokie, that takes us to item number 12. So this is an update to our committee memberships. I'll bring Ruth in to talk about the detail, but just to give a little bit of context, there's changes happening in terms of our board membership. So we are this year going to be losing some very experienced non-executives. Unfortunately, Gaynor can't be with us today, but Gaynor, who's been one of our longest serving board members, will be finishing her second term with us soon at the end of September. And then we also have Susan will be leaving us at the end of the year as well. And there are other changes coming up in the new year. So the changes to committee memberships that are outlined in this paper reflect those movements in personnel and seek to bring some stability and some future planning to our committee memberships as we go through this period of change. I'm also in the process of working with Scottish Government to recruit 2 new non-executives. So this takes into account future changes that are coming up on the horizon as well. Ruth, do you want to take us through some of the detail before I ask members to approve?
Thank you, Sarah. So yes, although the report is fairly self-explanatory, as you say, there are a number of changes that we're proposing over the summer and the autumn of this year to address those imminent and anticipated vacancies in board members. So we're going to be using a staged approach. So some of the committee memberships will change from the 1st of August, which is very imminent, and some will take place from the 1st of October, and they're set out in your report there. There are also some consequences in terms of those individuals who have been champions of particular areas. So we have a champion for environment and sustainability and for counter fraud. So our proposal there is that Jerry O'Brien should take over the champion role for environment and sustainability. And until we have a settled position in terms of our audit committee chair, Heleth Cooper will take over the counter fraud championship role. Similarly as well, there's a change in relation to the board's membership of the Highland Community Planning Board. And again, that's a change from Anne to Sarah for that particular role. So the details are shown on your report, and the details of the timeframes as well, and they're also explained in the report. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Ruth. And also just to say thank you to all the board members for completing the skills matrix. That's an important exercise which helps us in terms of our continuity and future planning around where we need to strengthen the board based on the skills and experience that we have around the table. So that's been positive progress as well. Happy to take any questions or comments around this. Okay, sorry, I've just lost my page now. So we are asking you to agree the changes as outlined. Is everybody happy with that? Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so item 13, any other competent business? Okie dokie. So the date and time of our next meeting is the 24th of September at 9:30. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time today. It's much appreciated, and I hope you have a lovely afternoon. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thanks.